Hello and welcome to BookPage Live. We're delighted that you're joining us as the editors of BookPage share a preview of our most anticipated books of 2022. You can find all of our lists of most anticipated books online in all of our genres and categories. And I promise our lists are a lot longer than what you're going to see today. Big 2022 books are being announced all the time. So this is just to get us started for a really great reading year. The anticipation of even more releases certainly isn't going to stop us from getting really excited about the books that we know are coming soon. First, in case this is your first time tuning into one of our preview videos, I'm just going to share a little bit about BookPage. BookPage is a reading recommendation guide. It's a publication for readers, for people who love to read. And we are here to connect readers with that next great book, which means that every single book and every single issue of BookPage is one we believe is worth reading. Our coverage includes books for all ages and of all genres and categories, so that any type of reader will be able to find something that they'll love in each issue. Here's the editors you're going to be hearing from today, along with our favorite books of this last year, 2021. First, you'll hear from me. I'm Kat Akery. I handle all the fiction and audiobooks, and my favorite book of 2021 was Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. Then you're going to hear from Christy Lynch, who handles our nonfiction and lifestyles, and her favorite book of 2021 was Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner. Then you'll hear from Savannah Walker, our genre editor who handles all the romance, sci-fi fantasy, mystery, and suspense. And her favorite book of 2021 was After Dark with the Duke by Julie Ann Long. Then you'll hear from Stephanie Appel, who handles our children's and YA literature. And her favorite book of 2021 was Little Witch Hazel by Phoebe Wall. She's so cute. Okay, first, join me as we get into fiction. The first book I want to highlight from my list is The Swimmers by Juliet Suka. I love a short, perfect little novel where nothing needs to be added and nothing needs to be cut away, and Juliet Suka is the queen. She just writes these ferocious little novels that land with a wallop. Readers love them, critics love them, and the awards show up for them. I actually just recently read her debut novel, When the Emperor Was Divine, which won the 2003 Asian American Literary Award and the ALA's Alex Award. And you're probably most familiar with her second novel, the internationally best-selling The Buddha in the Attic, which was a finalist for the National Book Award in 2011 and won the 2012 PEN/Faulkner Award for fiction. So The Swimmers is her third. And like those, it's short. It's clocking in, I think, under 200 pages. And it's following a group of recreational swimmers who have to stop swimming when they find a crack in the bottom of their pool. And one of the swimmers is a woman whose diminishing memory is exacerbated by the loss of these daily laps. And by the time her estranged daughter returns home, the woman is kind of lost in memories of her childhood in a Japanese American internment camp, which is a topic that Tsuka has definitely explored before, but doing so in a really new and beautiful way here. Very excited about that. This one's a jaw dropper for me. The Candy House is a sibling novel to Jennifer Egan's Pulitzer Prize winning A Visit from the Goon Squad. It's coming to readers almost a decade after Goon Squad, and it's the story of a brilliant man and his unique creation called Own Your Unconscious, which is technology that allows you to access all your memories and share those memories with others. If you haven't read Egan before, but you love a book where all the disparate strands of a book come together perfectly in the end, in a final glorious moment, Egan is your author. Conceptually, she's just in a league of her own. And I don't have the ability to explain how Candy House and Goon Squad are siblings yet, as I haven't read this, but I have to read the publisher's sort of not very helpful description because it makes me laugh. If Goon Squad was organized like a concept album, the Candy House incorporates electronic dance music's more disjunctive approach. With an emphasis on gaming, portals, and alternate worlds, its structure also suggests the experience of moving among dimensions in a role-playing game. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like nothing else I've read, and I am absolutely here for it. Next on my list is Take My Hand by Dolen Perkins Valdez. She's the best-selling author of Wench and Balm, and honestly, Her resume is impressive. She's a Penn Faulkner Fellow. She's a finalist for 2 NAACP Image Awards, and she's the winner of the first novelist award by the Black Caucus of the ALA. This is her first novel since 2015, and it was inspired by a true event, the 1973 Ralph versus Weinberger case, in which 3 underage Black sisters were sterilized without their consent, and a social worker's whistleblowing blew the lid off the nationwide scandal. Her novel fictionalizes these events through the story of a nurse in Alabama. And for readers of historical fiction, it's definitely one to watch out for. Next, YA fiction superstar and Prince Award winner Nina LaCour is making her first foray into the realm of adult fiction. And the world has stopped on its axis while we wait for the quiet power of Yerba Buena. It's the story of 2 young women, both of whom are shouldering way more trauma and pain than their share, and they end up finding their way to each other, and it just sounds beautiful. And what's really fun is this is not the first time you're going to hear about Nina LaCour from us today. It's a big year for her, so stay tuned for that in a moment. Next, flying solo. So Pop Culture Happy Hour host Linda Holmes' feel-good, utterly enjoyable best-selling debut, Evie Drake Starts Over, was one of our best romances of 2019 and earned an easy spot on that list because it made our romance editor, Savannah, who was not a believer in small town romances, a believer. So we're all thrilled to hear about the Holmes's second novel, which it sounds like pure joy and pure gold. The premise is, if I'm honest, a little basic. You've got a woman who canceled her wedding and she's moved to her hometown in Maine, where she has to take care of her great aunt's estate and finds a mystery in the treasures, and then has to unravel her great aunt's secrets. But it doesn't matter if the premise is kind of familiar, because it's Linda Holmes and she knows exactly how to deliver what you want in the most satisfying way. So if you're not already a believer, I just have a feeling you will be. Next is Horse by Geraldine Brooks. She's the acclaimed and beloved author of 5 previous novels, including the Pulitzer Prize winning March, and she's returning this year with a historical novel for all of my fellow horse people out there. It's also inspired by a true story, but this one by the story of a thoroughbred sire horse named Lexington. The novel spans from Civil War era Kentucky to present day Washington, D.C., and the novel is bound together not just by the story of the horse, but also by a 19th century equestrian oil painting. And it all builds to a tale of hidden legacies and the relationships between horses and humans, and the secrets held within art, which readers of Geraldine Brooks will recall this was an element of her novel People of the Book, so she's definitely in her wheelhouse. I also want to say, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's 2022 is really looking like the art novel has returned. Art thrillers are back, and this is definitely on the top of my list of those. Plus, I love a book that the title gets right to the point, Horse. And then the last one on my list comes from Booker Prize finalist and best-selling author Mohsin Hamid. His 2017 novel, Exit West, is the book I recommend to everyone I meet, regardless of whether or not I know you. So the news that he has a new one since that last novel, I gasped so hard that I ran out of air. I was so excited. Like Exit West, The Last White Man has a little dollop of the fantastical, as it's set in a world where white-skinned people wake up with darker skin. Hamid is one of those authors who he can package really complicated, difficult issues and make them reach just about everyone, even someone who maybe isn't ready to hear about them. Years ago, when he was touring for Exit West, I heard him talk about the rhythm of his prose and how he's intentionally trying to engage with that process, using the rhythm to reach people wherever they are, which is absolutely beautiful. Also, it must be said that he has a really great reading voice, so I'm hoping that he'll read this one on audio as well. Next up, we'll be hearing from Christy Lynch, who will be presenting on nonfiction.
Hello, I'm Christy Lynch. I am joined today by my sleeping cat, Leopold. So if you see a strange orange shape at the bottom of the screen, that is what you are seeing. The first book I want to tell you guys about today is In Love a memoir of love and loss by Amy Bloom. Amy Bloom is the best-selling author of novels such as Away and White Houses and Lucky Us, and In Love is her debut memoir. In it, Bloom writes about her late husband, Brian, who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in his 60s. From the time of his diagnosis, it took Brian less than a week to determine that the long goodbye was not what he wanted. So he and Amy made plans to visit an organization in Switzerland that offered accompanied suicide. The book moves back and forth between scenes of Amy and Brian's last week together in Zurich and glimpses of their life together before the diagnosis, as well as of Brian's eventual decline. All of it is heartbreaking, but beautifully rendered and well worth the tears you will likely shed while reading it. Next, we've got Gathering Blossoms Under Fire, The Journals of Alice Walker. This book is exactly what it says in the subtitle, the collected journals of National Book Award and Pulitzer Prize winning author Alice Walker, who turns 78 this year. The entries cover the years 1965 to 2000, and in them, Walker records her experiences of everything from marching in Mississippi during the Civil Rights Movement to marrying a Jewish man in 1967, which defied laws about interracial marriage in the South at that time, to participating in and challenging the women's movement, to becoming the first Black woman to win a Pulitzer Prize for fiction for her novel, The Color Purple. She also provides insights into all aspects of her personal life, including parenthood and family and sex and spirituality and activism, all written in that clear and perceptive voice that made her an American icon. And speaking of icons, next up is Tina Brown's The Palace Papers, Inside the House of Windsor, The Truth and the Turmoil. Tina Brown is the former editor of Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, and perhaps even more notably, the author of the Diana Chronicles, that dishy 2007 biography of Diana Spencer. So in her latest book, Brown sets her sights on the royal family since Diana's death, and no one is left unexamined. Brown writes with the sort of conspiratorial tone that almost makes you forget that you're reading a deeply researched work of reporting, because it is so much fun to read. So if you are one of those people who watches The Crown and spends the whole time wondering how much of it is really true, I suspect this book will clear some things up in a wildly entertaining fashion. Next is The High Sierra, a love story by Kim Stanley Robinson. Kim Stanley Robinson is the author of the best-selling Mars trilogy, among many other works, and he is widely regarded as one of our greatest living science fiction writers, which is why it's notable that he is making the switch to nonfiction for the first time this summer. Robinson is a California native who hiked the Sierra Nevada mountains for the first time in 1973 and has since returned over 100 times. So this book is his ode to the landscape that he knows better than any other, covering everything from geology to indigenous history to the environmental measures being taken to protect these mountains for future hikers and naturalists, all interwoven with events from Robinson's life that have intersected with his love of the Sierras over the years. Readers of his sci-fi know that whatever Robinson tackles, he conquers. And so we were excited to see this literary master tackle some new terrain this year. Next is Crying in the Bathroom by Erica L. Sanchez, which is such a great title. Erica Sanchez's young adult novel, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, was a finalist for the National Book Award in 2017. And in 2021, it was announced that America Ferrera will make her directorial debut with a film adaptation of the novel for Netflix. So If you aren't already familiar with Sanchez's work, now is the perfect time to familiarize yourself, especially because she also has a memoir coming out. Crying in the Bathroom is a memoir in essays about growing up in Chicago in the 90s and raising hell in a good way. She touches on everything from the failures of white feminism and living with depression to loving comedy and being raised by parents who were Mexican immigrants. The book is bracingly candid and funny and pissed off, and not that this is the most important thing about it, but it does have a gorgeous cover that you will look very cool with if you take it to the pool with you this summer. And finally, we've got You Hide That You Hate Me and I Hide That I Know by Philip Gorovich. Philip Gorovich is a staff writer for The New Yorker and the author of We Wish to Inform You That Tomorrow We Will Be Killed with Our Families, which was published in 1998 about the Rwandan genocide. For this book, Gorovich returned to Rwanda 20 years later to capture the ways that those who killed and those who survived have continued to live alongside one another since then. It's part travelogue and part investigative reportage with personal narratives and political analysis all rolled in. Much like that first book, this latest one promises to be yet another groundbreaking exploration of the effects of genocide, both nationally and politically, but most of all, personally. And now we're going to hear from Savannah Walker, who's going to start off telling us about her most exciting mystery and suspense releases of the coming year.
Hi, I'm Savannah, and I'm the genre editor at BookPage, and I'm going to start with my 3 most anticipated mystery and suspense titles. So first up, we have the Verifiers by Jane Peck. A very delightful and pleasing trend that I think I can feel happening is that publishers seem to have realized that everybody is interested in cozy mysteries. I think there was this idea that only a certain type of person is interested in cozy mysteries, and that's not true. Everybody's stressed, and everybody would love a nice little puzzle with a pleasing little sleuth to follow. So I'm very hopeful we'll see a lot more books in the same vein as Jane Peck's hilarious and utterly winning debut. It follows Claudia, who is a slightly underachieving Chinese American woman who is obsessed with Jane Austen and mystery novels. And she finds what she thinks is basically her perfect job at what is basically a dating detective agency. It's not really that. She basically helps people figure out if the people they're chatting with on dating apps are who they say they are. They track down people who ghost other people. But she stumbles upon a perfect opportunity in a morbid sort of way when a client disappears. So she sees this as the opportunity to become the sleuth that she has always wanted to be. My next title is 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. I love Peter Swanson. I think he's a little bit underrated because he is able to always craft a instantly addictive and interesting premise, be super funny while also talking about it, but also make all of these fantastic and interesting and winning characters seemingly effortlessly. And this is a great premise even for him. These people, there are 9 people who are all on this list of names. They all get mailed this list of names. They don't live next to each other or even near each other. They're not connected at all, but someone is trying to kill all of them and people start dropping like flies. I was immediately obsessed with it when I was looking at it, and incredibly, he manages to make all of these people interesting, even despite the fact that most of them are kind of horrible people. I was still delighted and would have read a book following any of them, just about going about their lives, even though there's also a mystery happening. And I just have full faith in his ability to craft an ending that is surprising and yet fitting of such a delightful, horrifying, but delightful premise. And then the last mystery on my list is Last Call at the Nightingale by Catherine Shellman. So Catherine Shellman is the author of the Lily Adler mystery series. It's a historical series set in the Regency, and there's only been 2 books in that series, but it is just so impressive. It is very difficult, especially the further back you go in certain eras, to craft a really good mystery while also giving people all of the escapist fun that they want out of a period, while also in an ethical sort of way talking about all the ways in which if you weren't a very certain type of person, so like in the Regency, a straight, rich and white man, your life would have been really difficult. Or even interrogating the fact that like if you were rich in that era, a lot of your money came from probably slavery. And Catherine Shellman's mysteries did, I think, one of the best jobs I've ever seen at doing that type of thing while still being really addicting mysteries and creating characters that you loved and giving you all the fun you kind of wanted from the Regency, but also still going about it in a very thoughtful and nuanced way. So I'm really excited for the start to a new series from her, which is going to take place in the 1920s, which I think is a period that is really ripe for that kind of re-examination, where it's obviously very fun, but I think maybe now that it's been almost, I know, about 100 years since the 20s, we've realized all of the things that were really major issues and all the places that people were really fighting to make the world a better place, despite all of the fun and the champagne. So this series follows a bisexual working class woman who goes to her favorite speakeasy to escape and also be able to express her sexuality in a semi-safe way. But then she stumbles upon a murder that ruins her safe haven, which is unfortunate for her, but she probably will embark upon a fabulous and glamorous life of crime solving. So at least there's that. And now we're going to switch switch tacks on to romance. The first one I have is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. And as Kat mentioned earlier, I am very much not a small town romance person. That's one of my personal blind spots as the romance editor that I've had to really work to make sure that I am covering people who love a small town romance. And, you know, maybe it is Linda Holmes who like started my conversion process. But this is a small town romance, and I thought it was just absolutely fabulous and really showed me what can be done with that setting. So basically, our fabulous bespectacled lady on the left is Claire, and she is a queer woman who has stayed in her hometown of Bright Falls, Oregon. She's a single mother, but she has found a lot of community in the town, and she has some problems in her life, but she's working through it. And then the lovely tattooed lady on the left is our titular character, not the left, the right. Our titular character, Delilah, who was basically a town outcast, hightailed it out of there as soon as she could, and is only back in town because she was basically emotionally blackmailed into photographing her sister's wedding. And what Ashley Herring Blake manages to do is give equal space and weight to both of their experiences. They're both people who knew that they were queer and came out when they were young, but they had really, really different experiences, both with the town and with the people in it. And she's able to honor that from both of them while also crafting a romance that is just really funny and warm and nuanced. And it's just a very, very impressive debut romance. The next one on my list is Emily Henry, author of Beach Read. And I didn't think it was possible that people were going to love Emily Henry more, but they probably are after this book because she's returning to the world of literary people and publishing, but she's doing it in a really clever and pretty unique way. There's been a lot of love stories and especially rom-coms set in the world of publishing, but you know, leave it to Emily Henry to find a new and funny little hook into it. This is about a literary agent who goes on vacation to a small town with her sister. And while she's there, she keeps bumping into her nemesis, who is a book editor, who happens to be in the same small town, also trying to escape the hustle and bustle of the publishing world. And I just found that that was just such a clever and hilarious way to kind of meld the worlds of like New York style rom-com with a cute little small town romance. So I think it's going to impossibly win her even more fans. And then the last romance on my list is A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. One of my reviewers, Carol Bell, made this observation about Alexis Hall that just lives in my brain all the time now, which is that he is basically the Richard Curtis of the modern romance novel. And for those of you who don't know, Richard Curtis was the screenwriter of Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and Alexis Hall has the same incredible ability to make this huge, like far-flung cast of characters that all have their own unique voice, are all uniquely funny, and there is just this very moving and beautiful love story in the web of all of those relationships. So this is actually going to be one of Alexis Hall's very first historical romance novels, which is a big shift for him. He's only done contemporary, at least to the best of my knowledge. So I'm really interested to see how his very, very, very unique and idiosyncratic voice translates into the world of historical romance. And it sounds very fascinating. It has a really, really great premise. It's basically about a trans woman who fought in Waterloo and used the fact that she was presumed dead to essentially embark upon a life as her actual self and fake her own death so that she can live as the woman she's always been. However, her best friend is absolutely destroyed by her supposed death. So this book follows her as she tries to figure out how to re-enter his life, and once there, figure out what their relationship is now that she is her true self. And I'm basically just really ready for them to have a lot of emotional conversations while being devastatingly witty and lovely. And I hope it is the first of many historical romances from Alexis Hall. All right, and now on to my last genre. We're going to do science fiction and fantasy. And the very first one I have is the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. John Scalzi is a national treasure, and this is very exciting because it is his first standalone novel in a while. He just finished his Interdependency series, and it looks like he decided to just have an absolute blast after wrapping up a really complicated and far-flung space opera type of series. This is about a woman who is a delivery driver in search for a new job as the COVID-19 pandemic hits. Fun fact, this is the only book set during the COVID-19 pandemic that I'm actually interested in. So a trophy for John. And our delivery driver gets a job at an animal rights organization, which she eventually finds out is actually people going to different universes to take care of kaiju. If you're not familiar, kaiju are basically like giant Godzilla type beasties. If you've seen Pacific Rim or heard about Pacific Rim, it's those type of creatures. But absolutely adorably, in John Scalzi's world, kaiju are basically huge, dangerous, but completely lovable and peaceable, like panda type creatures who just happen to be pandas that could like level a city. If this book is half as good as the book that like already exists in my head, it's going to be a masterpiece. So I cannot wait to take a look at it. And then we have Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. This book basically sounds like a mashup between Practical Magic and Downton Abbey. So I'm already over the moon about it. It's set on an English resort island right after World War I. But in this magical world, magic has been banned after being one of the main reasons their version of World War I was absolutely horrible. However, on this island, people are very much still using magic. They're just doing it kind of underground. So we follow a young woman who goes to this resort island and kind of gets sucked into this beautiful and interesting, but very dangerous underworld. May has basically described this book as being about morally gray women, found family, glamorous parties, and brutal magic, which sounds like my own personal wish list for a book and kind of for a good weekend. So I'm very excited. And then the last book on my list is In a Garden Burning Gold by Rory Power. It's kind of wild that ancient Greece isn't a more common inspiration for historical or historical inspired fantasies. It's usually like, you know, like ye old empire that used to be, that has since crumbled and everything like that. But this is very firmly inspired by the mythological elements and history of ancient Greece. So kudos to YA author Rory Power for picking a really interesting and unique entry point for her very first adult novel. It is about two twins with naturally long lives and supernatural powers, so sounds a little demigod-y to me, who help their father rule over their small country. But as he's getting older, he's getting unpredictable and he's losing his powers, so they have to band together to keep the kingdom safe and also kind of make sure that their family squabbles don't just completely rip it apart. And this might be because I just watched the finale, but in my head, this is a fantasy version of Succession with magical powers. And that sounds like basically the best thing ever. So I am very excited to check this one out as well. And that's it for me. So I'm going to turn it over now to Stephanie Appel, who will be taking you through all of our picks for young adult for 2022.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I oversee children's NYA coverage here at BookPage, and I'm so excited to share the YA middle grade and picture books that I'm most excited about coming in 2022. We're going to kick things off with my 3 young adult picks, and first on the list is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. It is hard to think of a more successful or more influential YA fantasy series of the 2010s than Sabaa Tahir's Ember in the Ashes quartet, which ended in December 2020 with the 4th book, A Sky Beyond the Storm. Tahir turns to vastly different territory for her next book, All My Rage. This is a work of contemporary realism about 2 teens who are coming of age in a small town in the Mojave Desert. And she's also doing a little bit of a dual timeline kind of thing. There are flashbacks to one of the teens' parents as well. Like All My Rage's protagonist, Tahir herself grew up on her family's 18-room motel in the Mojave Desert. So All My Rage, in addition to being her first work of contemporary fiction, is also a really deeply personal novel. Tahir has described it as the book of her heart, and that is really clear on every page. My next book is Emily X.R. Pan's An Arrow to the Moon. Pan's debut novel in 2018, The Astonishing Color of After, was a New York Times bestseller. It was also critically lauded. It received a Walter Honor as well as a YA Literature Honor from ALA's Asian Pacific American Awards. And it was that rare debut novel whose ambition is matched by its creator's skill. So An Arrow to the Moon looks even more ambitious, and I am so excited to watch Pan pull it off beyond my wildest dreams. Also, like The Astonishing Color of After, An Arrow to the Moon is going to blend romance, emotional storytelling, Chinese mythology, and fantastical elements. And I think it's going to be an unforgettable combination. And my final YA choice is I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. Casey McQuiston took the world of adult romance by storm in 2019 with Red, White, and Royal Blue, a book that just seemed to be everywhere. And she continued to delight fans in 2021 with her next book, One Last Stop. Red, White, and Royal Blue received ALA's Alex Award, which is an award given to books that are published for adults but have special appeal for teens. And that award, I think, is an indicator of the book's popularity with YA readers. So anticipation is really high now that McQuiston is writing a book specifically for teens. Like One Last Stop, I Kissed Shara Wheeler is going to combine mystery elements with romance, and it's also set at a school in Alabama that is giving me vibes of John Green's Looking for Alaska setting, which also took place at a boarding school in Alabama. Next, we're going to turn to my middle grade choices. First up is The Aquanaut by Dan Santat. Santat is best known as the Caldecott Medal-winning author-illustrator of the 2014 picture book, The Adventures of Beagle, the Unimaginary Friend. He has also illustrated and written lots of other beloved picture books. But I first became familiar with Santat as a graphic novelist in his 2011 graphic novel Sidekicks, which is an action-packed, hilarious story about a group of pets who belong to a superhero named Captain Amazing and who are also themselves superheroes. Santat packs so much imagination and heart into his picture books, and I really can't wait to see where he goes in this new standalone graphic novel. Next is The Ogress and the Orphans by Kelly Barnhill. Kelly Barnhill's Newbery Medal winning The Girl Who Drank the Moon is an exquisite fantasy tale. And she hasn't published anything for young readers in the 5 years since it came out. In 2018, she did release a collection of short stories for adult readers. The long, long wait is over, and it was worth every moment. This is another standalone fantasy that showcases Barnhill's word perfect prose and classic feeling, but fresh storytelling. And I think it's going to be beloved. And my final choice for middle grade is Small Town Pride by Phil Stamper. Phil Stamper has published 3 acclaimed YA novels that are character-driven and offer these incredible, complex depictions of LGBTQ plus teens. So I'm thrilled to see him branching out into middle grade books that center the experiences of LGBTQ plus kids are desperately needed, and I'm so excited to see more and more of them coming out every year. I also love that this novel is going to be set, as the title suggests, in a small rural town. BookPage recently interviewed YA author Preston Norton about their new book, which is called Hope Punk. And one of the things that Norton said to us was that queer stories are needed everywhere because queer people are everywhere. And so I'm really excited about this one. And finally, I'm going to talk about 3 picture books. Up first is John's Turn by Mac Barnett and illustrated by Kate Berube. I think Mac Barnett is brilliant. If Mac Barnett published his grocery shopping list, I would read it. He's one of the funniest, smartest, and most prolific kidlit authors working today. And I think everything he publishes is worth reading. On John's Turn, he's working with illustrator Kate Berube, who I love for her simple lines and her ability to convey complex emotions through her facial expressions. I should also note that as often happens, Barnett has 2 other books coming out this spring. He's got a picture book that's illustrated by Marla Frazee, author illustrator of The Farmer and the Clown. That one's called The Great Zapfino, and it's coming in April. And then in May, a book adaptation of the live cartoon that he developed during the COVID-19 lockdown with his friend and illustrator Sean Harris, called The First Cat in Space Ate Pizza, is coming out. So be on the lookout for lots of new titles from Mac. My next choice is Mama and Mommy and Me in the Middle by Nina LaCour and illustrated by Kaylani Juanita. You heard Kat earlier talking about Nina's first adult book. And this spring, we're also seeing her first picture book. Nina is an acclaimed YA author. She won The Prince in 2018. That's like the YA equivalent of the Newbery. And this book is really filling a gap in the picture book marketplace. There are very few picture books that depict families with 2 moms. And so this one is contributing some really sorely needed representation on shelves. And I should also note that the illustrator, Kaylani Juanita, is a really talented up-and-comer who's worked on picture books such as When Aiden Became a Brother and Magnificent Homespun Brown. Those are gorgeous. And if you haven't checked them out already, you should. And my final choice is The World Belonged to Us by Jacqueline Woodson, illustrated by Leo Espinosa. Jacqueline Woodson is one of our most beloved and acclaimed writers. She works on everything from picture books to adult books. She was our National Ambassador of Children's Literature in 2018 and 2019. And lately, she's been on a real picture book kick. For her picture books, she often works with amazing acclaimed illustrators, everyone from Rafael Lopez to James Ransome to E.B. Lewis. And here she's working with Colombian illustrator Leo Espinosa, who received a Pro Bel Prix honor for his work on Junot Diaz's picture book, Island Born. The World Belonged to Us is going to be a nostalgic ode to summer in New York City, as only these two talented creators could imagine it. So those are my choices. I'm going to turn it back over to Kat now.
Okay, thanks, Steph. This was so great. Thank you all for tuning in. You can see the full lists of all our most anticipated books on bookpage.com. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, we have a lot more. This is just some. And so be sure to check that out. And also be sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter. And our first issue of 2022, the ultra cozy January issue, is online now. We're really excited to share it with you, and we hope you would join us in our excitement around these releases, and be sure to check them out, and stay in touch, and we'll keep you posted about more great releases as the year goes on. Thanks again.